Hello and welcome to Around the Lens, episode 38. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. Our host this evening is off doing some real work and getting paid, so he won't be joining us tonight. Around the Lens, in case you have never seen or heard the show before, is a weekly visual journalist roundtable show airing every Monday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We are broadcasting live this August 22nd, 2016. We feature experts in the world of photojournalism and documentary filmmaking talking about news, topics, and gear related to our career field. If you want to know more about me or the show, head on over to aroundthelens.com. Our panelists this evening are M. Scott Brauer and Mark Abramson. I messed that
Hey
up.
there.
Sorry, Mark.
Hey guys. How you doing, Dave?
Scott, why don't you go ahead and start and introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name's Scott.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. My name's Scott. I'm a photographer in Boston, Massachusetts. Not from there. I'm originally from Montana. Been taking pictures professionally for about 10 years. Working for all sorts of magazines, newspapers. Work on my own projects. Do a lot of assignment work. That's me. I'm a co-founder of a blog called Dvafoto, DVAFOTO, and I write for a magazine about documentary photography called Raw View.
Cool. Mark?
Hey there. Thanks for having us, Dave. My name is Mark. I am a photographer and visual journalist based in New York City, but I'm originally from Russia. Moved around my whole life. Ended up going to school in D.C. and then started working for different newspapers in D.C. and then Milwaukee, and then moved to New York to start freelancing, and just been working for different newspapers as a freelancer, contributor, working and then work a lot on different long-term projects, mostly about immigration, and then this year a lot related to politics. And I've been, I guess, doing this for about seven, 8 years. Yeah, and I've been in New York for about 5, almost 6, going on 6.
So. Awesome, great. Well, glad to have both of you on tonight. We've got a great show for you. We're going to talk about all kinds of stuff, which, by the way, if you are watching the show live, you can follow along with us. I've already posted the show notes on our website, aroundthelens.com. So you can follow along as we talk about what we're going to talk about tonight, and also head over there after the show for all the extra stuff like the eye catchers and whatnot. A little bit of housekeeping. We will be having another show this Thursday all about the Olympics. So if you are an Olympic photographer or you know someone who is and want to be part of the show, it's going to be one of our super mega big shows, just like we did with the RNC, DNC. So just come on out for that. Now that show will be broadcast live on the Thursday, but we won't put it up as a podcast until that following Monday. So there's not going to be any Monday show. That will be the Monday show. And then beyond that, we'll be having lots of great shows throughout the months, and I'm already going to start hyping it up. Episode 50, even though it's 3 months from now, November 14th, that's going to also be another super big mega show. So that's pretty much it for the housekeeping. Let us get on with the show and go on to our first topic this evening. So our first topic has to do about Steve Jobs, actually. Steve Jobs, what does he have to do with this? Well, he was actually inducted into the International Photography Hall of Fame. So this is a pretty big honor. He was noted primarily for his work, increasing the role of photography, and science of photography through the use of, the iPhone and whatnot, which, the camera for the iPhone was, revolutionary at the time in terms of just making, the phone was revolutionary, and the fact that, it integrated and also put so much emphasis on the camera is sort of, I guess, putting the emphasis on him. So that came out in 2007. So let's talk a little bit about this. Obviously, the International Photography Hall of Fame, it's a pretty big deal. What do you guys think about Steve Jobs being selected for this? Do you think that he's the right person? Is he worthy of this? Is his contributions worth it? Did he make big enough contribution to be recognized? Mark, why don't you start with you?
I mean, I absolutely think so. I mean, I'll be honest. Like when the iPhone, The iPhone came out, I guess, with the camera in 2007. I hadn't started photography until 2009, so I'm from that generation.
Right.
I think when I first started shooting, I thought, oh, this is not serious, using an iPhone. But I mean, it is revolutionary, and I think he's it makes sense that he's an addition to the Hall of Fame. I mean, everybody, like it or not, uses an iPhone or a mobile phone to take pictures these days. I mean, it's probably the most used tool, right? So, in that sense, like on a scientific scale, on a world scale, on a global scale, I mean, it's huge. It's one of the biggest revolutions to happen to photography, probably. Even though photography is such a new medium in the sense of how long it's been around. So.
Yeah, I would say, obviously, he didn't invent the camera phone. That that's been around since the beginning of smartphones. But yeah, I think he definitely popularized it. And I have DSLRs. I've got micro four thirds cameras. I've got point and shoots. But obviously, probably 90% of the time, I'm shooting pictures with my phone. So I think he did a good job ushering that in. What do you think, Scott?
I got to be honest, I had never heard of the Photo Hall of Fame until this news came out. So I don't know how big of a deal it is or what. I looked at their website. They've been around for 50 years, but I don't know anything about the organization or anything. Steve Jobs put him in, I guess. Put a camera in everybody's pocket, and that's a pretty big deal. Got a lot more people taking pictures. I mean, sure, why not? I don't know who else is in the Hall of Fame. Do you?
Well, the other 7 inductees that were also being inducted at this time include Ken Burns, Ernest Haas, the co-creators of Photoshop, John and Thomas Knoll, Anna Leibovitz, somebody called Graham Nash, Sebastio Salgado. So these are some pretty well-known names. I definitely think he's in good company.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, that's right. I mean, but what about Ken Burns? Why is he in this Photo Hall of Fame?
Yeah, that's so interesting.
That's a good question.
Could it be because of the pictures and the Ken's burn effect?
Yeah, that'd be my guess.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, they're not just honoring straight-up photographers. They're Ken Burns is a documentary filmmaker first, more so than a photographer. Photoshop co-creators, I mean, they're programmers first. They just happen to. I think they're honoring not only photographers like Annie Leibovitz, but people who've made a monumental impact in the world of photography. And I don't think anybody would doubt what Photoshop has done. I mean, just ask, Joe McCurry. I mean, he'd tell you, how powerful Photoshop has been for him. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess Ken Burns is a little more interesting pick to me. A little more like you got to wonder a little bit why he's in there, but it makes sense. I mean, he uses photos extensively and relies on photography for storytelling through history in a way that nobody else used photos before, and very influential in that respect. It's kind of interesting. Kind of interesting to me to have a filmmaker in the Photo Hall of Fame.
Well, he got the Ken Burns effect named after him, so.
Yeah.
I think again we talk about this. I mean, again, the camera phone is now the probably most widely used camera in the entire world. Everyone has, for the most part, a smartphone with a camera built into it, usually of a pretty high quality for the most part. And we always see, like, for instance, the new Samsung Note 7 that just came out, or Samsung and Apple now have the the ongoing battle, which is the better camera phone. So yeah, I think it's warranted, especially considering the other inductees.
I was just gonna say today I used my iPhone camera, and it was interesting. Like, I had my Fuji X100T, which I love. I carry it everywhere for that reason, to have it everywhere. And not use my iPhone. Yet, for some reason, I saw this really nice pocket of light in Chinatown, And what did I do? I went straight for the iPhone, put it on
That's
Square,
interesting.
and just, and it was just, and I later took out the Fuji, or not took it out, but, it was slung around. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's like my brain's been trained that way in the last few years or what. And I don't know. It's
I
interesting
mean, I think it's just that instant gratification, real device that can get you from sort of vision to reaction. I think your camera is great, but you gotta go down or download it or transfer it to your phone via Wi-Fi or whatever. There's steps involved, but there's no real barrier to getting it out there when it's on your phone.
That's true.
Have either of you used your phone for professional work?
No.
Like, in a pinch?
No. Nope.
No?
I don't even use it for non-professional work. I don't use the camera on that. I used it today to deposit a check.
Nice.
But I quit using my iPhone camera mostly probably a year ago. I was just unhappy with the quality of it, and switched over to just transferring pictures from a camera over to the phone. So I don't use my camera very often on the phone.
Well, nothing takes better pictures of food than a camera phone.
Yeah, I can't say I've ever taken a picture of food.
What?
uh,
Cell phones have made it so easy to share pictures of your food with friends. You remember what it was like before camera
I
phones?
know.
You had to
I
take a
know.
picture with your film camera. You got to go
Yeah.
down to the store, get it developed, make the prints, then mail it out to all your friends.
Yeah.
Just show them pictures of what you're eating.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that Steve Jobs' greatest innovation in photography was putting a camera in everybody's pocket, though. I think it was more in the consumption of photography and the dissemination of photography. And I find that a lot more interesting, what he and his engineers have contributed to in that respect. And I think we've never had more people looking at more photos than ever before than right now, and looking at old photos, looking at new photos, looking at iPhone photos, looking at large format photos, whatever. And I think that's because of these phones.
So they have lowered the barrier of entry to even viewing work.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in
Them and the
college,
applications have.
absolutely. When I was in college,
Good.
trying to look at good photography, I'd go to my school library and just sit in the photography book section because that was the only place I could find decent photography. And now, I mean, you can get Magnum or National Geographic on Instagram and Snapchat and all that. I mean, that's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of great work out there. Tons of very high quality Instagram accounts. So. All right. Great. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our next topic this week. August 19th, which is just a few days past us, was World Photo Day. So we thought about this at the website. We were wondering what would this mean to us. So we were talking about our first camera. Zach's first camera was a Pentax. What were your guys' first cameras?
Go ahead, Mark.
My first camera was, well, I had two first cameras. I got them at the same time. I don't know if that counts. I don't know which, but I used them at the same time.
I'll allow it.
You'll allow it? Okay. Well, it was, so I got two cameras. I had never taken really a picture in my life before. Honestly, like I hadn't thought about photography until then. But I got this, an AE1 Canon 35 millimeter film camera with just a regular 50 mil lens on it. Bought some Tri-X, and my brother showed me how to load it. And then I also got a Canon PowerShot G9, which was really tiny and amazing. And yeah, those were my first two cameras.
Awesome. Awesome. How about you, Scott?
Well, there were two cameras I remember using when I was like 4, 5, or 6 years old. I mean, really young. And I'm not sure which one I had first. There was one that I remember sending away in a box of cornflakes. And it's this tiny little thing that the body of the camera is actually like the film canister. Is this weird old I think it's 110 film, but I'm not sure about that. It's in a plastic this little thing that looks like a reel-to-reel almost, and then the plastic cornflake camera kind of fits onto that. And I'm sure it took horrible pictures. I don't remember any pictures from it. And then the other one was like, I don't know who made it, and it was like a little rectangle about the size of two like cigarette packs end to end, lengthwise. And then you'd have these disposable flash bulb cube things that would stick out of the top of it, and you take a picture and use up the flash. I think you get 8 flashes or maybe 10 flashes in one of those. And I think he used the same film as that cornflakes thing. I think it was just cheap amateur film. And so those are the 2 cameras I really remember using early on. I like to take pictures, but I have no idea what I took pictures of. But then in high school, I inherited my grandfather's Spotmatic film camera. Used that working for the school newspaper. And then my parents got me a real nice Canon, I think it was like an A2E or something, another film camera for my high school graduation, and I used that a little bit in college. And then the first camera I ever bought for myself was a Nikon F3 HP. It was just a real nice camera, and it's real cheap. I got like old naval surplus that was found in a submarine, and this camera shop in Seattle like redid all the foam in them and checked the timing on the shutter speed. So I got that and a couple lenses and called it good.
Nice. Yeah, I used all assortment of point and shoot and Polaroid and just very basic cameras, for the majority of my life up until actually I graduated from high school, and then I did my stint in the military, and that's when I first got my first experience with real cameras, with apertures and shutter speeds. Actually learned about like how to load up film and all that good stuff. And the first camera I got to use ever, like a real camera, was the FM2 from Nikon, and then I used the F3 after that. And then I had the, I think, N8008, I think it was. And then I think the last film camera I touched was an N90S. That was the last film camera I had. I played with some medium format as well. And then the first camera I ever bought myself was the Canon Digital Rebel. So, nice. And that was the first one that came out. Well known because it was the first digital camera that was like in consumer-friendly pricing range, under $1,000. Everything else before that had been well over that mark. So that was the first camera I bought myself, and then it's pretty much just been, of course, digital ever since. Never gone back, never turned back.
What's the first picture you took that you thought, oh, this is something?
I mean, it probably happened when I was going through to military school for photography, and just in terms of learning how to use the craft. I mean, I never really thought about photography as something I'd ever want to do back then. It was just more. I actually thought it was like when I found out, because the way the military works is you don't always get to choose your job, and I didn't get to choose the job of photography. That wasn't what I wanted. I actually wanted to be a graphic illustrator. So when they told me I was going to do that instead, I was like really disappointed. I was like, oh no, not photography. That's so boring. But then I actually got to play in it and use it and do it and learn that I actually liked it. And I would say some of the stuff I shot, because you start out, you start at the very basics of the core beginning of photography. So we did, obviously it was all film back then. So we started with black and white, and just some stuff I shot even back then. I still look at, I still have all my stuff, all my film from then, and I look at the shots I did in the black and white, and it's still stuff that I'm proud of. The fact that that was the very first things I shot. It was cool stuff, and there's a few shots from my education back then that I'm still proud of. I would say the first photograph, I shot this really cool picture of a car in black and white. It was all reflective and stuff, and I liked that shot. But anything like photographs before that, they were all, garbage, inexperienced, not knowing what I was doing type photographs. So I can't say anything I shot before that was of any worth. I still have some of that stuff in photo albums, but did you ever use one of the cameras that had the pre-formed sort of like looked like binoculars sort of, it's like little film cartridges that was shaped like, it had two big ends and then the flat middle. You know what
Yeah,
I'm talking about?
that's the two first cameras that I use that type of film.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
remember that type of
So
film.
yeah. So that's what the Cornflakes camera used, and the body of the camera. So the camera that you got in the box from Cornflakes was just like a little top piece, and then a plastic lens that kind of went in front of that, and I guess a shutter button and a film winder, and then the body of it was the plastic film case.
Nice, nice. Your parents probably have those photographs somewhere. I'm sure
I
it's
don't know
somewhere in a
about
box, somewhere in the house.
that.
No?
Maybe.
All burned up in a fire?
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows?
Do you still have your first shots, Mark? Do you still have, what you
I do.
photographed?
I do, yeah. The first photographs I had really taken were of, I had gone abroad at the time. It was my junior year of college, and I went back to sort of, because I grew up partially when I was a kid, we lived in Spain, in southern Spain, so I went back to kind of reconnect with roots. And I was, remember one of the first pictures I took was with that little Canon power shot, and it was this little town called Toledo, right near Madrid. I was living in Madrid at the time, and there was this crazy light coming down. It's light that I still like to shoot today. I can't believe I liked it when I first started shooting. It like fascinated me, and there was this mom walking with her little son, and it was like this tunnel of light, you know, and I still have it, and it's I think I toned it up. I was trying to teach myself how to edit. I think I toned it up slightly. It was like kind of black and white sepia. I thought that was really cool at the time, and it was just this like moment, yeah, where they were holding hands.
Oh,
I remember
cool.
that like pretty intensely as being like one of the first really like moments I had shot.
Cool.
Nice. And you've only lived in the digital age, or have you used film as well, Mark?
Both. But I quickly went over to digital because it was just seemed a lot faster and a lot easier. And I mean, I still play with film. I shoot with like a little Yashica T4i. But when I started out, yeah, I was doing both. But then when I finished up my trip about a year later, I kind of stopped, and I just went straight to using some. I got like a Nikon D90, isn't it? I believe, yeah. And it just everything, yeah, it just seemed much quicker. So I really am a digital age kind of guy.
Right.
I wish I had had more time and experience with film because I love the slower nature of it. I feel like I grew up in a generation, in a time when you just shoot to get something, and then you pick via editing.
Right.
And I appreciate the old way much more. But what are you
I
gonna
think
do?
I think the biggest loss with the film era is not so much the aesthetic quality of film, but because I think you can duplicate that pretty well with filters and whatnot. I think it's just the going into the darkroom and the working your image and processing your film and your paper, doing the light table and everything. That whole sort of art to it is completely lost pretty much in this day and age. So that's the only thing I miss about that. Everything else though, don't care.
I really didn't get.
Happy to have digital.
I didn't get. Yeah, I'm happy to have digital too, but I'm sad I didn't get more of that. I wish I had had more time in the darkroom. I hardly got any time in the darkroom.
Did you guys have a darkroom where you were, I guess, using it? I mean, did you have it, was it school or?
When I went back to school, I to finish up my last year, we had a darkroom, yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
But didn't get too much time with it, Busy using digital.
Yeah, I think in the mid to late 2000s was when they completely got rid of the darkroom where I went to school. For a little while they did have film there as sort of to teach you the basics, So you knew the understanding of film and how it worked before you went to digital, but I think the last 5, 6, 7 years has been all digital.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be interested to know like what schools still teach with film, or if they still have film as part of their, photography program.
Or what photography program is still there? And Brooks just closed last week. It's so
Right.
sad.
Right. Yeah, I don't know anyone really going to school for straight photography right now. I think it's kind of a dying art, dying craft to learn. But anyways, what was your first digital camera, Scott?
Trying to think. Oh, the Olympus, I think C7070.
Nice.
Yeah. I read that. I remember I didn't have a lot of money when I was starting out. I was interning for an agency in New York called Black Star, and needed a digital camera. And I'd read. I think it was that year that Maioli won Photographer of the Year in the BPPA or in Best of Photojournalism, in the NPPA Best Photojournalism. And he did like all this work in Iraq with these tiny little Olympus cameras that were really cheap. So I figured they're good enough for him, they'd be good enough for me. So that's what I used. It got me by. It was okay. Did some good early work with it, but abandoned that pretty quickly. So right after that, interned at 7, worked on some of my own stuff a little bit, and then interned for a couple of newspapers and got to use some pretty decent cameras. And so then after I got done with those internships, I bought a 5D. And bought it used, and I think it was a refurbished one that was also used, and that did the trick.
Okay, cool. Well, let's go on with our Gear of the Week segment this week, talking about the lens rack. It's an innovative new way to organize your camera gear for quick and easy access to lenses, flashes, bodies, whatever you need. I checked this out kind of on a whim, just looking up gear that had come out, and this is kind of like one of those things you sort of, you would see kind of on a Kickstarter. It's sort of like, I think it's an interesting piece of gear. I don't know if I'd ever use it myself, but it is interesting in what it's trying to do. And there's a pretty neat video that shows the guy using it, and I think for his use case, if you're in perhaps a studio environment, it's not a bad way to organize your lenses, but I don't see how anyone in any mobile platform would use it. Pretty much only studio is, I think, the only use case for it I can think of. And then it was funny, in the video, he's showing like how hard it is to switch lenses and how time-consuming it is. And the only thing I'm thinking of is every single black and white portion of a infomercial ad where they're trying to convince you to buy the item, and they're like, I can't handle these. It's how to strain spaghetti. I can't do anything. That's the only thing that came in my head is like, this will speed up the speed at which you change lenses. I mean, yeah, I guess so, but it doesn't take me that long to change a lens. So what do you guys think of the lens rack? Is this something does intrigue you at all? Would you use this in your day-to-day work?
Not at all. No, I have no use for it. My camera's on, or my lens is on my camera and in my bag.
Scott, you should get that one for your big Godox.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got no use for it and couldn't imagine any.
I don't know if you've ever seen Scott's gear. It's pretty hilarious. He stands out.
What kind of gear do you have, Scott? That makes you stand out.
I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
What's a Dodex?
No, I got this big bare bulb flash that I've been using for a while.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it's huge and doesn't look like anybody else's flashes. So I think that's what he's talking about.
Is it reusable, or do you have to put a new flash bulb in it each time?
No, yeah. You have to put new powder in it each time.
You gotta do the
yeah.
So it doesn't intrigue either of you. Is that because most of your gear is pretty much sitting in your camera bag the majority of the time? you don't have enough lenses to necessarily have extra lenses sitting out, or why, how do you like handle or organize your gear?
I personally, or Scott, do you want to take this one first?
No, go ahead.
I mean, I watched the video, and I just thought, yeah, I thought the same thing as you, Dave. Like, I was like, this seems like it only makes sense for studio. And actually, for studio, it did look like it made sense. Like, it lines up. You don't have it all over in different tables. Like, I always make that, right? Whenever, or like when I'm shooting video, and I like set up in someone's living room or something, somehow all my lenses and all my gear and all my bodies, they always end up like one on the couch, one in the kitchen, so for that maybe it actually would work, who knows. But for I think the majority of the work that I do, and probably what Scott does, I mean, yeah, we're just working out of bags, and that's, for me, the biggest issue always is having the right bag. Should have an episode just about bags. I'm trying to figure out my bag situation. Like, I feel like every year I'm like having to dedicate time to figuring out my bag situation.
Do you have the massive collection of bags that most photographers have?
It's horrible. I'm the bag lady.
You got an addiction? You gotta go to Bags Anonymous?
Yeah, you're like, oh, I need a bag, for this trip, but it's in the city. But I need my computer for this one. I'm not going too far. I'm only going this amount of mile. It gets crazy. Or they're like, oh, I'm going to, on an airplane. I mean, I have way too many bags.
Okay. How about you, Scott? Any possible? What is your typical setup? For how you organize your gear.
Two answers for that. When I'm not using the gear, I almost always leave my gear on a floor somewhere, usually out of the way, because I'm really worried about dropping it. And I always have been. I don't think I've ever really dropped any gear, but I've always been worried about that. So anything that thing with the lenses sticking out of it, I'm just going to hit my hands on it or knock it over or whatever. So I've got no use for that. So like right now, all my camera gear is on the floor behind me. And that's always the way it is. For a long time, I used, just like a regular camera bag over the shoulder. And I quit doing that recently. I was kind of tired of, I don't know, it was just long days starting to hurt my back a little bit. So I switched to a belt system, and I like that pretty well. And been using that for the past 4 or 5 months, I guess. And I haven't used a bag in a long time. Belt works pretty well, but I look like a complete idiot when I wear it.
Yeah, I would say if I had perhaps a couple dozen camera lenses like the guy in this ad has, then I could see, where I would have like drawers worth of camera gear, all lined up. I think it definitely helps in if you have a drawer full of camera lenses, it helps you line them up and make sure they're not like falling over and hitting each other and stuff like that. Or if you happen to have hundreds of camera lenses, you could have them stacked up and organized. But you still need to have like 2 sets of camera backs.
I was just going to say that.
Lens.
What are you doing? Yeah.
Right. So again, I think it's a very limited use case scenario, but I did think it was a neat thing, and I'm glad that people are trying new stuff and trying to make innovative stuff. But yeah, not everything catches on. Sorry, Lens. I guess I blew that sponsorship opportunity. Oh well. Moving on. So yeah, right now. Well, let's. We're nearing the end of our show, guys. That was a quick one. So at the end of every show, we like to talk about our eye catchers. These are things that we saw, a news story or a photo story or a resource or a website that we thought you as the audience would be interested in checking out. So I always throw it to my panelists first. So let's start with you, Mark. What's something our audience should check out?
Well, I've been playing with more conceptual work within, I guess, visual journalism lately, and I was looking back at a story that it popped up somehow in a feed or maybe my email or so, I don't remember how, but it was from back in 2014, Lens blog. I guess hopefully all the viewers know the New York Times Lens blog, but it was a piece by this photographer, Annalisa Natali Muri. She's Italian, and it's a piece called "Emotions Reverberate After the Sky Crashed," and it's all about kind of these dreamy landscapes, but in Bangladesh, in Dhaka, right after the Rana Plaza collapse, which was just a horrific accident, or horrific incident. Forget what the death toll was, but it was just a really interesting way the photographer played with memory and with, you know, post-traumatic stress disorder within these images, these black and white, often multiple exposure images, and it just, I don't know, for me it was nice to look back at, because just to remind myself of trying to, you know, think of concepts behind sort of feature stories, and how to relate to these stories, and maybe tell them in a different way rather than just straight journalism, or straight photojournalism, I should say, and literal photographs.
What is it about the approach that really draws you to the work?
I think what the photographer did was just pushing the language a little bit of photography and taking a risk, you know, because there's, you know, these people that you photographed, a lot of them, you know, lost family members, or you know, were affected themselves in some way, and to just put them in these very vulnerable sort of frames that she created to play with their stories is really difficult to do, I think. And you know, I think maybe sometimes we're afraid to do that within. I think what's different and what's really powerful is just like the emotion within the work. It's just less. It's not so much literal, but just very emotional, and really it is really cerebral. That's what I like about the work.
Was it done while the event was unfolding, or was it kind of after the fact? Talk with people about their situations, or
after the fact? I think the following weeks, and that's always really hard. You know, everybody comes to an incident. It's so difficult because everybody, you know, runs to cover like the immediate aftermath or while it's happening, and right, it's so intense, and it's you know, you're just shooting exactly that document that's just occurring right in front of you. But afterwards, it's like, well, how do I tell the story of these people and actually communicate it to everybody in the world? I mean, there's so much catastrophe, so you know, I think we're all desensitized in some way in today's age to these horrible events. I mean, I know that sounds terrible, but you know, finding new ways of telling these people's stories, I think is really powerful, and just I think communicating in a new way, maybe not a new way, but communicating their story. It's just so hard to tell someone's story after such a horrific incident.
Yeah, well, it's hard to. I mean, as a photographer, it's so hard to step back and look beyond the immediate catastrophe and try to find the human story within it. I mean, don't you think?
I think it's extremely difficult. I agree with you completely. You know, you want to do the story, you want to do it justice. But yeah, I mean, it is important to step back and really take kind of a wider view, and to understand how it plays within a larger context.
Well, it's. I mean, and an event like that, that's the one with the picture that was really well known from that event was the you know, that couple embraced, right? And
the couple embracing, and that was, I think there were a couple photographers who got it, but there was one that was really famous. And yeah, that's, I mean, those images are obviously so important. But it's like, I mean, the what I can think, like the most similar story that comes to mind is the refugee crisis that everyone's been covering last year. Like that image of the boy out of the water, you know?
Yeah.
Such an important image, you know, and but how many of those images can we look at? So it's about telling story in other new ways. There's this
and yet
Danish.
we have another image like that just this week. You know, that boy,
Which one was that?
Omran, I can't remember his last name, 5-year-old boy in the back of an ambulance sitting against an orange chair, and he's just gray from all the rubble of destruction in Syria, and it's been everywhere. It's been on the news stations. New York Times ran an article about the photo, I believe, and you kind of use that as a jumping off point to talk about how people are starting to care about Syria again. I mean,
right.
Very interesting. Every so often there are these touch points. There's so much other work that gets done around these events that a lot of people just don't see.
Definitely. Well, thank you for that, Mark. I'll make sure to have that link in the show notes. Scott, what do you got for us?
Well, I haven't been looking at very much. I've been on the road for the last month, first at the conventions, and then a couple weeks on a Greyhound bus for Bloomberg.
Nice.
So I haven't looked at that much, but I have a couple links pulled up. A friend just recently posted on Facebook this project by, I think it's Jan Banning, I think, Dutch photographer, portraits of bureaucrats around the world. Just these amazing portraits of like mid-level functionaries in local governments around the world in their offices, and it's just phenomenal portraiture, really beautiful work, and really gives an interesting look at governments around the world that you just never would see.
Oh my God, this is great. I'm looking at it now.
It's amazing. It's so good.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's really good. And then there's one image that came out this week that really caught my eye from Daniela Zalkman with Boreal Collective, from the stuff, the Native Americans trying to stop a pipeline project in, I think she was in, was it North Dakota? Yeah, it's North Dakota. And there's this image of a line of probably state police, I imagine, and then a couple of people approaching them on horses, and it's just this beautiful, iconic image. It's not so much about the action or anything, it's just this beautiful scene that looks like, something like this is played out many times in the American West over the years. Yeah.
And guess what she took that with?
I don't know. Phone?
Dave. An iPhone.
Whoa!
Yeah, but it's a great picture. And then two other bodies of work that really excited about that I saw recently. I was in Germany for this big festival. Jakob Schnetz did a project called Trade Show in the Heart of Capitalism. And it's just wacky photography in Hanover, Germany, which is a place that has like.
Who is it? What's it called?
Trade Show, like trade, like trading. Corporate expos. In the Heart of Capitalism by Jakob Schnetz, Jakob Schnetz. And it's just weird photography, and such an interesting look at the industries that drive our world, because this is where they go to sell all their products. And it's really funny. It's really interestingly photographed, and it's beautiful. And then really good. And then the last one was a guy I met in Germany named Felix Schmidt. Did a project called Dear John, traveling across the Midwest. And just really nice, beautiful pictures of the American Midwest, kind of loosely tied to current politics, but in a way that, it's really interesting to see an outsider's perspective about something I know so intimately well. And I really like his work.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. My eye catcher this week is actually a shout out for a two-time panelist of the show, a Mr. Mike Sharkey James. He is actually host of another podcast called the Petapixel Photography Podcast over there at petapixel.com, and they just passed a milestone 100th episode. So I just want to give it up to them for. Actually, him for putting all the effort in, making an awesome 100th episode show. So go check that out. Go listen to his show if you don't already. He does great work in terms of, I think, condensing the news with very little filler, just getting right to the news. It's I think, a very well condensed, well put together 20-ish minute show that I highly recommend if you're a listener of the podcast, which, if you're listening to the show, you probably are. I hate to break it to you, in case you didn't know. Beyond that, though, I thought there was another good story out in Petapixel talking about the photo industry from 1978. So, me and Scott kind of waxed a little bit about the old film days. So here you can find out what it was like back in the way, way long time ago days, before I was born. So go check that out. I'll put those links in the show notes. And this concludes our show for this week. Guys, why don't you go and tell our folks, our audience, where they can learn more about you. Scott, why don't you go and start?
Okay, so my website is mscottbrauer.com. See some of my work there. You can also see a lot of my work from the New Hampshire primary at 2016.mscottbrauer.com for a project called This is the Worst Party I've Ever Been To. The last 2 weeks, I was on a Greyhound bus traveling with a writer for Bloomberg, talking to people about the election, and we did daily updates from the road, and that's called Bus to November. So like if you search for my name and Bus to November and Bloomberg, you'll probably find it. And then check out the magazine I write for called Raw View. It's, I think, the 6th issue just came out, or coming out soon. The most beautifully produced photo magazines, all photos, and then a couple interviews, no ads, no nothing. It's like a book that comes out 3 times a year, and it's just beautiful, and I can't believe I'm a part of it. And I think that's it. On Instagram, M. Scott Brauer. Okay.
Awesome. Mark?
Yeah, so to jump off of, piggyback off of Scott, my Instagram is Mark Abramson Photo. I post a lot of my work there. But you can, this year I've been working a lot as well, just like Scott, on the 2016 presidential election. I've been working on this project called Two-Face. It's
amazing.
You're amazing, Scott.
Everybody needs to check it out. It's so good.
I don't have it on my website, but it's been. You can look in the June issue of this year of Harper's. We did a piece about the Floridian primary race. You can look on Time. There's The Standard, which is a Belgian publication. Most recently, from the Republican National Convention, on the photo booth section of the New Yorker, you can see my photos from there. And then also Univision, they did a border edition, I call it, of the work, an immigration border edition from the San Diego-Tijuana border area. So basically it's this project where I've done these over the past 8 months, multiple exposures of the entire election process and all the different characters that play a role within this election cycle, like the themes, the candidates, the supporters, the you name it, and just sort of the chaotic blend of it all.
What was it, if you don't mind me breaking in there, Mark, what was it like to extend that work to kind of ordinary people, to the people, the farm workers and all that? I mean, because a lot, what I see in your work is this like glitz and glam and all the craziness and all that, and then to try to do that to something that's probably a lot quieter, like somebody working in a field. Was that difficult for you?
It was really refreshing because I have been shooting a lot of the glitz and the glam. Refreshing because to me those are the folks that matter, but it was also kind of refreshing because it was going back to kind of the work that I'm used to doing, which is the small, intimate stories. I mean, the last story I'd worked on was a 2-year project out in California as well about an undocumented family and their journey. It was nice to bring it to them because they actually related not so much to the glitz and the glam, but the this election cycle. Like everybody's talking about it. Doesn't matter where you're from, who you are. I mean, Trump, Clinton, like it's all a topic that everybody has something to say about, even if you're not originally from here or you just recently moved here. And it was wonderful to share it with them, and more wonderful to include them in the project because everybody plays a role within this machine.
Nice, nice. Well, all right, we'll definitely go ahead and check that out. And you can find me at aroundthelens.com. If you want to find me personally, and connect me via djmphoto.com. That's where I throw my personal work on there. Um, and again, I want to say thank you both. Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Mark, for taking time out to be a part of the show and talking about all things visual journalism related. I appreciate your time. And before we close the show,
Thank you.
I would normally
so
close
much.
the show here and say, well, thank you again, both. Before the show, you said you two know each other. So how do you two know each other? How did you guys meet?
I mean, we
We have a
actually
few minutes.
met pretty recently.
In New
Um,
Hampshire
yeah, New Hampshire. We're
in
both
January.
covering politics, and that's like that. But we hit it off. I mean, Mark's a good guy, and somebody to commiserate with when we're in the buffer, standing down below Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders or whomever.
And I had seen Scott's work before because he had been working. Everybody, honestly, he's super humble guy. Like everybody should see Scott's work. It's phenomenal and
now.
hilarious and like haunting, which I love. It's like you don't want to look at it because it's so scary, but you want to stare at it at the same time. It really is the worst party ever.
Nice.
It's like it's amazing
Any
work.
fun stories? Any fun stories from working? I guess New Hampshire, working the campaign trail. Were you assaulted by any right wingers or any yelled at anybody by
I was almost
via
body
media or
slammed.
anything like that? Anything crazy? Oh, nice.
I got kicked out of a couple Rubio events.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they
He's a nice guy.
no, his body man hated me for some reason, and they hated my flash. So soon I take a picture, and they'd come over. Like the first time, I took a picture, and the guy came over, tapped me on the shoulder, said, you need to quit doing that right now." And it was at a big news event, right? And so so I took another picture, and then he said, "You need to leave."
Oh my God.
Yeah. But I don't know. My most memorable moment with Mark was sharing some trail mix at the RNC.
Nice.
Sitting in the back of a car in a hot parking lot, just wondering what we're going to take pictures of because there wasn't much going on.
Right.
Cleveland was.
Bonding over trail mix. I like it.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thanks you both for M. Scott Brauer and Mark Abramson. I am David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens, episode 38, and we're out.